Well, the next topic of the next unit is prefer, would prefer, and would rather. Well, it's not that difficult. This topic it's not difficult to understand, but it's more difficult to memorize all the structures that you have to use after those expressions, right? So let's start first by recognizing the difference between each one. So I have prefer, general prefer, okay? The prefer that goes alone, just the verb. Prefer, I just prefer to talk about like a general preference, right? Something that I just like, okay? So when I say I prefer dogs to cats, I mean like I just like dogs better than cats. That's it, right? So I'm talking about a general reference. I'm talking about what I like or what I don't like. And every time I have two options, I'm going to use the preposition to separate the options. So I prefer dogs to cats. I prefer coffee to tea. I prefer English to French. I prefer Monica to Rachel. I don't know, whatever, right? So when I have a noun, I just separate the nouns with the preposition to. But when I have a verb, right, I prefer reading to writing. I'm going to write the verb in gerund, and I'm going to separate the verbs if I have the options with the preposition to again, okay? And of course the next verb is going to be in gerund again, okay? So I prefer reading to writing. I prefer sleeping to watching TV. I prefer running to jogging, whatever, right? So gerund. Then we have a specific preferences. When I ask you which of these options do you prefer, right? Or in this case, what would you prefer? So I'm talking about like more specific preferences. So for this, I would use would prefer and would rather, which are synonyms. They mean the same. Maybe would rather is a little bit more popular when we have like two options, but I would say that basically they're just synonyms. And in here, the differences remain in the structures that I have to use after those. Okay, so after would prefer, I'm going to use the preposition to. So I would prefer to swim. I would prefer to drink coffee. I would prefer to study. And the biggest difference between would prefer in this case and would rather is that in would rather, I'm not going to use the to. I'm just going to use the verb in base form. So I would prefer to swim, or I would rather swim. I would prefer to study. I would rather study. That's it. What happens if I have two options again? So I'm going to separate the options with the following prepositions. I would prefer to swim rather than run. Or I would rather swim than run. Okay, so I'm going to use rather than with would prefer, and I'm going to use just than with would rather. And after that, I use the verb in base form, right? Get it? So more examples. I would prefer to watch TV. I would prefer to drink chocolate. I would rather stay at home. I would rather ride a motorcycle. Okay? So these are the ones that I use to talk about my preference, about my actions, right? I would prefer to swim. Who swims? Me. I would prefer about my actions. I would rather swim. Who swims? Me. I would prefer to watch TV. Who watches TV? Me. I would prefer to drink chocolate. Who drinks chocolate? Me. Right? Or I would rather stay at home. Who stays at home is me, and that's it. But when I talk about my preference about other people's action, right? About something that another person is gonna do. So I'm gonna use the following structure. I would prefer you, right? In this case, I'm gonna use the object. If I have to use the object pronoun, I would use the object pronoun. Me, you, us, them, him, her. And I can also use a noun, right? So I would prefer Catalina. I would prefer Andrea. I would prefer my dog. And after the person we would prefer, I'm going to use the same structure. The verb in infinitive means to verb, right? So I would prefer you to speak. I would prefer Andrea to bring me a beer. I would prefer my dog to go for a walk. I don't know, whatever. So it's my preference about another person's action. But when I use would rather, I'm going to use again the object, the other person, right? Andrea, Catalina, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to use a normal sentence, okay? So I'm not going to use me, I'm not going to use him, her, them, but I'm going to use a complete sentence in past simple. So I would rather you spoke. I would rather Catalina helped me, right? I would rather Andrea brought me a beer. So I'm going to use a normal sentence in past simple, right? Past simple. So a normal sentence means a subject and a verb in past. If it is negative, so a verb in past, right? With the auxiliary did, didn't. Another example, I would prefer my dog to sleep. We would prefer, object, infinitive, or I would rather my dog slept. Would rather in the complete sentence, subject and verb in past. I would prefer you not to speak Spanish, or I would rather you didn't speak Spanish, right? Okay, yes, I forgot something. So not to swim, right? And not swim. Easy peasy. So I just write the S before the verb and that's it. So, get it? Okay, let's do some exercises.